For more than 300,000 years, Neanderthals were the undisputed rulers of Europe. Long before cities, kingdoms, or even agriculture existed, they had already mastered one of the harshest environments humans have ever faced. They survived endless, Ice Age winters, hunted massive animals armed with nothing more than carefully crafted wooden spears tipped with stone, controlled fire, built shelters, and cared for injured members of their communities. They were not clumsy cave dwellers wandering blindly through history. They were intelligent, adaptable, and remarkably successful. Then, almost without warning, they disappeared. Around 40,000 years ago, the last Neanderthals vanished forever. Their camps fell silent. Their tools stopped appearing in the archaeological record. Their distinctive bones disappeared from caves they had occupied for thousands of generations. A species that had survived hundreds of thousands of years simply faded from existence. What really happened? For decades, scientists searched for one dramatic answer. Perhaps modern humans slaughtered them in a brutal war. Perhaps a sudden ice age destroyed their food supply. Maybe a deadly disease swept across Europe. Every theory seemed convincing at first, yet every new discovery revealed a far more complicated story. Today, archaeology, climate science, and ancient DNA tell a different story. There was no single battle, no single disaster, no single day when the Neanderthals ceased to exist. Instead, their extinction unfolded over thousands of years through a chain of events that slowly pushed one of humanity's closest relatives toward the edge of survival. Ironically, one of the biggest reasons they disappeared was also the reason they had survived for so long. Neanderthals evolved around 400,000 years ago from earlier human populations living in Europe. Over countless generations, their bodies adapted perfectly to the cold. They became shorter and more muscular than modern humans, reducing heat loss during freezing winters. Their broad noses warmed icy air before it reached their lungs. Their powerful arms and shoulders allowed them to hunt enormous prey at close range. Unlike modern hunters who often relied on bows or traps, Neanderthals hunted face to face. Imagine standing only a few meters away from a wild bison weighing nearly a ton. There were no fences, no rifles, no safe distance. Every hunt meant charging directly toward an animal that could kill with a single strike. Broken bones found in Neanderthal skeletons resemble injuries seen in modern rodeo riders, suggesting just how dangerous these hunts truly were. Yet they succeeded. For hundreds of thousands of years, they became masters of this lifestyle. They understood seasonal migrations. They knew every valley, every river crossing, every cave that could provide shelter from winter storms. Their survival depended on deep local knowledge passed from one generation to the next. But survival has a hidden weakness. The better a species adapts to one environment, the harder it becomes to adapt when that environment suddenly changes. Around 60,000 years ago, another kind of human began spreading out of Africa. Homo sapiens, your own species. Unlike Neanderthals, these newcomers had evolved in a much wider range of environments. They had already survived deserts, tropical forests, coastal regions, and open grasslands. Their greatest advantage was not stronger muscles or larger brains, it was flexibility. Modern humans experimented constantly. They created lighter stone blades, bone needles, fishing equipment, throwing spears, and eventually spear throwers that allowed hunters to kill from much greater distances. Small improvements accumulated over generations, making every hunt slightly safer and slightly more efficient. Here's the thing, none of these innovations alone guaranteed victory, but together they changed everything. When modern humans entered Europe roughly 45,000 years ago, they did not immediately replace the Neanderthals. For thousands of years, both species lived on the same continent. Archaeological sites show overlapping occupations, suggesting they often shared landscapes separated by only a few days of travel. Did they fight? Probably sometimes. Competition over hunting grounds, caves, fresh water, and migration routes was almost inevitable. However, archaeologists have found surprisingly little evidence for large-scale warfare between the two groups. Instead, competition likely looked much more familiar. Imagine two neighboring communities relying on the same herds of reindeer. If one group consistently hunted more efficiently, the other would gradually find less food. Over years, then decades, then centuries, even small differences in hunting success could determine which population expanded and which slowly declined. Food was becoming increasingly difficult to find. The climate during this period was changing rapidly. Europe experienced repeated swings between warmer and colder conditions. Forests expanded, then disappeared. Grasslands shifted hundreds of kilometers. Animals that Neanderthals depended upon changed their migration routes or became less abundant. A successful hunting strategy perfected over thousands of years suddenly became less reliable. Modern humans adapted by widening their diet. They hunted large animals, they trapped rabbits, they caught fish, they collected shellfish, they harvested more plant foods, they became generalists. Neanderthals, although capable of eating many different foods, remained far more dependent on large game in many regions. When those animals became scarce, every winter became more dangerous. Then another problem emerged: population. Genetic studies suggest that Neanderthal populations were surprisingly small. Across all of Europe and Western Asia, there may have been only a few thousand individuals alive at any one time. Many groups probably consisted of fewer than 20 people. Think about what that means. A harsh winter, one failed hunt, a disease, an accident. The loss of just a few adults could threaten the survival of an entire community. Small populations also face another invisible enemy: low genetic diversity. When close relatives repeatedly have children together over many generations, harmful genetic mutations become more common. Ancient DNA recovered from Neanderthal bones shows evidence that many populations were already experiencing inbreeding long before modern humans arrived. This didn't doom them overnight, but it made recovery from every crisis much harder. Now add another factor: contact with Homo sapiens. For years, scientists imagined complete separation between the two species. Ancient DNA proved otherwise. Modern humans and Neanderthals had children together. Today, almost every person whose ancestry comes from outside Africa carries roughly 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Tiny fragments of their genetic legacy remain inside billions of people alive today. That discovery completely changed the story. Neanderthals did not simply disappear. Some became part of the expanding Homo sapiens population. Generation after generation, mixed families passed Neanderthal genes into growing human communities. As Homo sapiens populations increased, the number of individuals identifying as purely Neanderthal became smaller and smaller, until eventually none remained. In other words, part of their extinction was also assimilation. They did not lose every battle. They lost their identity as a separate species. The final known Neanderthal communities survived in isolated places like southern Spain and possibly Gibraltar. Protected by geography, they held on for thousands of years after disappearing elsewhere in Europe. But isolation cuts both ways. It protects, it traps, it limits. With fewer neighboring groups to exchange knowledge, find mates, or replace lost members, each generation became more vulnerable than the last. Eventually, the archaeological record falls silent. No more Neanderthal tools, no more Neanderthal camps, no more unmistakable Neanderthal skeletons. Not because of one catastrophic event, because thousands of small setbacks accumulated over centuries until recovery became impossible. Climate change, competition, small populations, low genetic diversity, interbreeding. None of these factors alone explains their disappearance. Together, they do. Perhaps the greatest irony is that Neanderthals were never truly defeated. Their genes survive. Their influence survives. Even parts of your immune system, skin, hair, and metabolism still carry traces inherited from them tens of thousands of years ago. The last Neanderthal never really vanished. A part of them is reading these words right now. And perhaps that is the real ending to this story. History often celebrates the winners as though survival belongs only to the strongest. But evolution tells a different story. Survival belongs to those who adapt before circumstances force them to. The Neanderthals were strong, intelligent, and resilient, yet the world changed faster than they could. It's a reminder that success is never permanent. The routines, comforts, and systems that feel unshakable today can disappear within a few generations. Your ancestors survived not because they were perfect, but because they kept changing. In the end, evolution never rewards the strongest species. It rewards the one willing to become something new before yesterday's success becomes tomorrow's weakness.